A very good afternoon to everybody, and thank you, ma'am, for such a comprehensive and inspiring speech. It was truly suited for the context, and it set an excellent context. With this, I would like to invite my panelists on stage. Can I please have Mr. Arun Kumar Mishra on stage? He's the Director of National Smart Grid Mission in India and has been at the helm of the affairs for smart grids in the country for a long time. Thank you so much, Mr. Mishra. Can I request Dr. Bernard Ernst to be on the stage? He is Group Manager, Grid Planning and Operation from Fraunhofer IEE Institute, Germany. Can I have Mr. Sam Shaka? He is Senior Director, Technical Program Operations, IEEE, and has also been a founder and a great contributor to Electrama and this World Utility Summit for a long time. And last but not the least, can I have Mr. Vimal Mahendru on stage, please? He's President of Legrand India and also IEC Ambassador and member of IEC Standardization Management Board. Thank you so much for having been on the stage. I'll start with my opening address. Okay, let's start. Okay, maybe we'll play that towards the end. So I have a small context-setting presentation here with me, not too many slides. In this conference, and we have all the esteemed members here. We've all heard about energy transition. We know we are moving to a cleaner, greener, smarter economy, to power sector. So what we try to do is, try to analyze a little bit more, and that's available in our knowledge paper from EY and NSGM, which talks about when the impact is likely to hit us more. We've talked about that, renewables will rule the world. We talk about storage coming in. We see the cost declining. But, ultimately, it is the economics which will play. As ma'am rightly said, consumer is not bothered about what kind of power he's getting, whether it is green, clean or not. He's the first thing which bothers him is the cost and the reliability. So, we try to do some analysis, some permutations as to see, what is going to be the impact and when is it likely to hit us. So I would just like to leave a message that, when we look at energy transition, this is a big revolutionary age that we are living in. This is the kind of revolution which we are seeing in this sector after a long, long time. And it is very interesting that we are all going through this revolutionary phase. We are actually making history here, and the next couple of years will actually be very determinant of that. And the kind of decisions that we take, the country takes and the world takes regarding this will actually be key to moving towards this transition. We've talked a lot about, and this is just another way of representing, we were moving from, a changing economy, changing power sector, and the 3 Ds are impacting us the most: decarbonization, decentralization, and digitization or digitalization, as we said, as we discussed in the previous session. We have all these aspects above the line, which sort of talk about decarbonization and decentralization, and below the line, all the elements which talk about digitalization. India is moving up fast, and again, as ma'am rightly said, the context, we've seen a lot of policies and supporting frameworks coming up, starting from commitment to NDC framework, RPOs, reverse auctions, some policies coming in, Ujala, Kusum. So we have seen a whole gamut of initiatives that are being directed towards this transition. Just coming straight to the point, what we try to look at is that when is it likely to going to make an impact on us? When will it make the impact the most? And we looked at it from 2 dimensions. First, in terms of decarbonizing. So more from a generation front, as again ma'am said. So we looked at 4 scenarios. We looked at, when the existing or the new coal plants will actually become cheaper or costlier than the existing renewable generation, the variable renewable energy resources. So when will setting up new coal-based plants become more expensive in comparison to the variable renewable resources. The second tipping point, as we call it, we looked at is when will the existing coal generation, which has probably exhausted its fixed cost, its only variable cost now, will become costlier than the new variable renewable generation. Then we looked at the third tipping point is when can we avoid building new baseload coal stations. So, when will the when will the new coal-based stations become expensive or more expensive than renewable energy plus storage? So that is not variable renewable energy, that is when we can store the renewable energy also. And the fourth one is when we can displace the existing coal stations. So when will the existing coal stations become more expensive than renewable energy plus storage? So we did some scenarios and combinations around it, and we, pretty much tipping points 1 and 2 have, we would say, have already been reached. We are already seeing where, some of our new coal-based stations, it's costlier to set in comparison to variable renewable energy resources, not mixed with storage. So, we are already witnessing that. It may take some time before we see that the existing coal-based stations, which are running at a much cheaper cost, become costlier than new renewable energy resources. If we take storage, and as we have discussed in this conference for the last 1.5 days, we see the cost of storage coming down sharply. So we see in the next, by 2025 to 30, we can see, that the new coal-based stations will actually probably become costlier than renewable energy plus storage. Storage costs will come down sharply further. And the existing ones will probably it'll take some more time for them to be economical in comparison to renewable energy plus storage. Of course, this is based on a set of assumptions, and we can discuss and challenge the assumptions, and it can work certain this way or that way. And we have our knowledge paper available which sets out some of those assumptions, so you might want to have a look at it. But I think that's not the point. The point which we're trying to make is that this is a reality. It is just a question of time when this will happen, so we should move towards that transition. And as ma'am rightly said, the utilities need to be at the forefront of this transition. So they need to wake up to this reality that we need to make this change. We need to work towards making this transition and not think that this will never happen. In terms of decentralization, we again looked at 3 tipping points. We looked at when the grid cost of supply, or the power at the rate which we supply electricity today will become more expensive than the cost of generating and storing power locally. So from our rooftop or microgrid resources, they will become cheaper than the grid cost supplied power. When will that happen? The second tipping point is when will electric vehicles actually become cheaper or than the ICE engines that we see today. And the third, when will the cost of only transporting, not even generating, when will the cost of transporting electricity actually exceed generation and storing it locally? So, again, we look at some of the scenarios, and we estimate that by 25 to 30, the grid cost of electricity, distributed electricity, will actually be costlier than the storage and generating locally. So nobody will actually like to come, nobody who can actually generate locally would like to come to the grid to buy power. So these are some of the scenarios, and again I want to re-emphasize the fact that this is only meant to highlight that this is a reality which is going to hit us very soon. And the consumers, we will find the consumers who are who right now are not interested whether the power is green or whichever way we are getting it, will be at the forefront of this revolution. They will demand, they are trying to move away. They will be the first ones to move away from the utility, putting pressure on utility, and we are seeing that already happening. We've done this kind of analysis as EY, we've invested in this, and we've done this kind of analysis for all other countries, and I may say that India is somewhere in between some of the more developed and developing economies. And this is again available in our knowledge paper. I would end this session as to, what does this mean for us? What does this, translate into policy measures, standards measures? And that's where my esteemed panelists will actually, make their comments on this. So, this transition definitely requires standardization for wider acceptance and even lowering cost of capital. The more uncertainty you have, the more unpredictability you have, that even increases the cost of capital because of the uncertainty. What is the kind of infrastructure and resources that the country is trying to put in or is willing to put in for innovation and indigenization? We cannot keep importing everything, and we cannot keep losing the bus on everything, whether it is storage or other technologies. How do we improve the productivity of resources, being land, labor, capital, as I said. Most importantly, as Ma'am Sahni said, that how do we look at reforming and restructuring incumbent utilities for minimizing the disruption. The distribution utilities will be at the helm of this disruption. Everything, policy measures, standardization, everything will hit the distribution utilities first. So how do we minimize that disruption to the utility and make sure that they change their phase, they change their DNA? So that's very important. How do we aggregate demand for entrepreneurs, industries? Again, industry needs certainty to put in investments. So how do we make sure, give that certainty to investors? And how do we establish conducive commercial frameworks which we can honor in future, which we don't shy away from saying that they were completely out of line, they were out of sync. How do we have new market mechanisms coming in, new financial and commercial products coming in? So these are some of the things that we have to look at from an energy transition perspective. So I will just stop at that. And I would like to invite my first esteemed panelist, Mr. Mishra, to make his opening comments in this regard.